lastly, if you haven't actually been the victim of stolen refunds or hacked information or a scam, you might be the victim of a delayed tax refund due to this big backlog of the IRS investigating. During the 2024 filing season, the IRS suspended processing of almost 2 million tax returns pending identity verification because this problem has gotten so big and so widespread. Welcome, everyone, to the Smarter Online Safety Podcast. I'm your host, Jocelyn King, and wow, have we got a topic for you today? Because we have been inundated at Smarter Online Safety in our workshops and our emails and on phone calls with people asking questions about all these IRS phone calls that they're supposedly getting from the IRS, as well as text messages, emails, and everything else. And so we just want to set the record straight, and we are going to cover this really incredible topic. So did you know that as of February 24, the IRS identified 32,616 tax returns claiming approximately $272 million in fraudulent refunds? Well, it sounds like a lot, and the problem is, and it is, but the problem is these are all made up of lots of individual people, and I'd like to highlight some of the types of things that are going on. Brad K was a father with his first baby, and new dad balancing the responsibilities of parenthood and work, and he received a call from someone claiming to be an IRS agent. So this caller asserted that Brad owed back taxes and faced immediate arrest if he didn't pay promptly. So under pressure, and of course he's sleep deprived and behind at work and trying to learn how to be a new dad and fearing legal consequences for himself and his new family, he complied and then quickly discovered that he had been deceived and lost all this money. An elderly woman had been duped by government impersonation scams. A woman named Judith, who was in her 70s, was contacted by individuals posing as FBI agents who convinced her that her identity had been stolen and that she needed to transfer her savings to a secure account. Trusting the imposters because they did sound really believable and helpful, she followed their instructions, and that resulted in the loss of her entire life savings. That, of course, affected her, but it also affected her adult children and grandchildren financially. They now have a mom who's living on her own in a financial system, and they now all the money that was paying for that care is gone. So this case highlights how scammers exploit the authority of government agencies and how the victims are widespread. It affects the entire family and sometimes an entire community. And another one that really caught our eye was Jerry L. from California. He used to assist others with safety and security, but he fell victim to a scam where he also lost his entire life savings. But compounding this, he now owes the IRS over $30,000 in taxes for the stolen money, illustrating the devastating and these multifaceted impact of all these scams. Because when you're withdrawing funds that you shouldn't be, and you've got tax implications, and you're the one who actually went in and logged into the account and downloaded it, you are still responsible for the result of that and the taxes of that. So, these things just echo on and compound, and that's why we're doing this special, edition. So we want to give you some of the top tips of what you should know so you can protect yourself, especially around tax season and tax preparation, so that you do not become another statistic. So back to those 32,616 fraudulent tax returns. The IRS has a criminal investigations unit. Yeah, I think we hear the theme song coming of a new TV show. But they prevented over 96% of them from being issued, which is a very high number. Of course, some of them, 3.5 or so still got through, but they did prevent those. And in 2024 alone, they initiated over 2,600 criminal investigations that led to over 1,500 convictions. So law enforcement is alive and well working on these things. Some of these are overseas, and then they're arresting people in the US who are what they call money mules. And a money mule is somebody working in the US. A woman in Nevada was arrested. She was working with an Indian scammer operation. So she's basically the mule collecting the funds and then getting a percentage of it. Sometimes these people get 10% of the overhaul and and then all the money's going back overseas. And in fact, the only reason that they're able to get caught is because they are on shore, they're on American soil or connected to, an American entity and are able to be caught under our government's law because so much of this goes on overseas and we don't have jurisdictions or ways to stop it. And when I say we, I mean our very valiant law enforcement that is working night and day. The FBI alone has a total of almost 1 million cases every year of just cybercrime and losses. And what we're talking about today is just specifically those related to the IRS scamming and people impersonating IRS officials. Now, compounding all of this too, in 2024, the numbers are in, there were 970 data breaches, 970, exposing 640 million consumer records with full Social Security numbers exposed in 71% of those cases. Now, there's only 330 some million Americans. So obviously, some of us were in those databases multiple times with different amounts of information, making an even bigger profile about us for sale on the dark web. So these are all things we need to be aware of. And lastly, if you haven't actually been the victim of stolen refunds or hacked information or a scam, you might be the victim of a delayed tax refund due to this big backlog of the IRS investigating. During the 2024 filing season, the IRS suspended processing of almost 2 million tax returns pending identity verification because this problem has gotten so big and so widespread. So almost 2 million tax returns. So if you file early, which is one of our tips, file early so that you're beating, scammers and hackers who are trying to get in and file your tax return and diverting it to their account. So filing early is good. But if you did file early, you could have found yourself delayed. So that happened to a lot of people as well. So let's continue on with our top tax time cybercrime tips that really every American needs to know. So besides filing early, first of all, the IRS will never email, text, or direct message you. You're not going to get a text from them like you would from a family member or a company like your mobile carrier or someone where you have enabled authentication. They just don't. If you get a text, email, or social media message claiming to be from the IRS, it is a scam. The IRS will always initiate contact by mail, not digital messages. So that's big red flag. Watch for fake IRS phone calls. Scammers do spoof real IRS phone numbers. So coming in on your phone, it might say the IRS. And if you have the IRS in your phone contacts, it might look like it's in your contacts. They can spoof that number, but that doesn't mean it's the real number. And then they use threats like arrest, deportation, if you're an immigrant or on a W-2 visa. I'm sorry, or I mean, if you're on a visa, or they could talk about license suspension. So you need to hang up and just call the IRS directly. That is listed online, but it's 1-800-829-1040, like their 1040 tax form. So 1-800-829-1040, and that is what you call. But do not engage with any inbound calls to you, supposedly from the IRS. Ask them for the agent's name, their identifier, what department they're in, that type of thing. They may hang up, they may give you something. And you could call this legitimate number and find out that that department doesn't exist or no such person exists. But get as much information as you can and then tell them, well, I'm going to call the IRS back directly to make sure this is legitimate, and they cannot fault you for that. Okay. Then third, we talk about this a lot, and you're going to hear this over and over, but it's just to reinforce it. Use strong passwords and two-factor authentication on tax prep software. If you use TurboTax, H&R Block, and others that store sensitive data, use a unique complex password and enable two-factor authentication. That way, if a hacker is hacking in, you're going to get an alert on your phone, and you're only going to get alert on your phone if they actually have the correct password for your account. And that means they are getting in. So you do need to block that immediately. Okay. And then call the main number and tell them you've been hacked. And you, of course, have to change your password right away. We did talk about filing early, just a little bit more about that, because criminals try to file fake tax returns using your information before you do. They're playing a game of file first. And the earlier you file, the less chance they have to submit a fraudulent return in your name. You also want to be aware of phishing emails claiming tax refund available. I hate to disappoint you, but you're probably not getting that $3,400 refund from the IRS that everybody's been getting an email, and you're not getting it in a single check. These phishing emails trick you into going to a site and entering your social security number or your bank details so that they can then immediately, I mean, literally within an hour or two, be able to turn around and submit a tax return with a large refund coming to you, but of course it goes to them. So do not fall victim to those. Know the signs of tax identity theft, right? So one obviously is if you e-file, if it's rejected because a return was already filed under your social security number, or you received notices for income you didn't earn, you may be a victim. And so you need to investigate that right away. Now, if you get help with preparing your taxes, use trusted tax preparers only. I can't tell you, oh my gosh, we get flooded with these questions because there's people thinking they're getting a good deal by going to a tax professional, somebody who's going to save them a lot of money, all of this. So scammers pose as tax professionals to steal your info or to inflate your refund fraudulently. And so you need to verify their credentials with the IRS Directory of Federal Tax Return Preparers. The IRS has a website that has a full list of that, of those who are actual tax return preparers. And these are some of the biggest red flags to look for. If you're working with somebody and they won't sign the return, which they need to do as a paid preparer, and they won't provide you with a full copy of your tax return, that is a red flag, especially if they say you don't need a copy or they ask you to sign as if you prepared it. Big red flag. Do not sign it, back out, and immediately call the IRS. If they promise huge refunds before seeing your info, how can they know if you're going to get a huge refund? So if someone guarantees big refunds or says they can get you more money than other preparers before reviewing your income and deductions, run the other way. If they charge percentage fees based on your refund amount instead of flat fees, no legitimate person is going to give you a percentage rate. Maybe your sketchy brother-in-law, but no real tax preparer is going to do that. So don't fall victim to that. Nobody should charge you a percentage of your refund. If they ask you to sign a blank or incomplete return, which everybody, that's like signing a blank check, right? And you wouldn't do that, right? I hope not. Do not sign blank checks. Do not sign blank or incomplete tax returns. Do not sign blank contracts that still have to have information put in. You are responsible for protecting yourself. Safety first. Never sign anything that has not been filled in, particularly a tax return, particularly by somebody claiming to be a legitimate tax preparer. And if they ask for the direct deposit to go to their account first so that they can make sure it comes in and then send it to yours, big red flag. It should be going directly to your account. Now, if they are a problem person and you've already given them your bank account details, you've got another problem. But this is why you want to do your upfront work and make sure they're legitimate by looking on the IRS website. And they must have a PTIN number, which is the Preparer Tax Identification Number issued by the IRS. And that's why they're also going to be listed on the IRS. And just in case somebody's using one of the legitimate ones and claiming to be somebody else, you've still got to be careful about what email are they using. If they're using, gamer123@gmail.com, they are not a legitimate tax preparer. They should have a legitimate tax preparer business feel to them. They should have a website, though those can be copied, so you still have to be careful. But if anything looks suspicious or gets your spidey senses going, pause, stop, right? And you want to make sure it's legitimate. And the best thing to do is always, if you can get a referral to a tax preparer that you know is really good from somebody you trust, that's the best way to go. Only use secure Wi-Fi when filing. There are so many people who think, I'm just going to go down to Starbucks or the public library or wherever and do it, and they're typing all of their information. And if I'm sitting in my cafe and I'm in a, you know, protection mode thing and I see some of your data, I might come over and ask you, is this your social security number? Most people aren't going to come over and share with you that you're giving your information to across the airwaves to everybody. Scammers will just take it and use it. So please do not use that. If you are away from your home network, use a VPN, a virtual private network, or definitely use a secure network, or use your cell phone as a hotspot. Use it for cell phone wireless for security. Now, this is a big one. Shred your paperwork with your personal information. You know, people, you have your old W-2s, your 1099s, even your tax prep checklists and things like that that expose all your information, your income and all of that. That is all, if you just throw that into the recycling bin, there are so many ways that that gets picked up and reused. And there's plenty of organizations and more stories than I could tell you on this podcast about how dumpster divers get that type of information. And I just want you to think of it this way. It's bad enough that there are all these enormous data breaches that leak your social security number and mine and our other personally identifiable information. But for heaven's sakes, don't be your own worst data breach. You know, pay the $5 or whatever it is at your local UPS store or shredding facility or community shredding event. Just make sure that you see them shredded. I went to a public shredding event and you take it there and you actually watch it go into the machine and come out shredded. So you know that nobody's taking it to then later, you know, they're doing this good deed of taking all this paper and then they're actually mining it for information later. So just make sure that it's shredded, or make sure that they're placing it in the secure lockbox. Even when I go to a postal annex or a UPS store or something, I say, I say this is for a business and I need to witness you put it into the lockbox. And so I just make them, and sometimes I even have to walk me into the back room, but just it doesn't hurt to ask. It's a very legitimate request to just say, you can even say, my boss said I have to make sure this is, blame it on somebody else, but make sure that it's actually being put into the lockbox. You never know where people are lurking who are scamming information. So it should say Iron Mountain or one of those companies that specializes in secure paper destruction. And then you're greatly decreasing your odds of leaking your own information. Then our last one is check your IRS account online. Hardly anybody does this. If you haven't already, create your IRS.gov account to monitor your tax activity, and it monitors it linked to your social security number. It's free and it gives you a heads up if someone's filing in your name. And let's face it, your social security number, mine, and almost everybody's is out there. The odds of your social security number not being on the dark web are very small. If you're not on the dark web, you should go to Vegas because you've got great luck. So what you should be doing is making sure that it's not being used against you. And so logging in to make sure that you get information about any activity linked to your IRS return based on your social security number. It's like a governmental tax two-factor authentication. If you get an alert and you haven't filed, you call them immediately. And that is one of the best tips that you're going to hear, because people who have done this have stopped fraud from happening, and they have not become another tax fraud, cybersecurity crime victim statistic. And that's what I want for you. So just remember that hackers' biggest tools against you are fear and confusion and speed. If they can get you into a fear state, so you're not thinking well and feel confused, they can persuade you to quickly act to give away money or information that they need, and then they quickly act on that. So the pause is your best friend. And when in doubt, wait and check legitimate sources to see if this is legitimate or a scam. So that is what you really need to be doing to protect yourself. Do you even know what your online safety risk really is? Hardly anybody does. Well, now we're offering a free online safety quiz at smarteronlinesafety.com. We put this together with input from all of our experts to help people understand how much risk you have and which bands you're in. Because since bad guys only have to be right once, you're only as strong as your weakest link. And so our goal is to help you realize where you have some area that you need to shore up. So really want to invite you to take our free online safety quiz. Again, go to smarteronlinesafety.com. And until next time, stay safe out there.